And let's give him a warm welcome, Curtis Greco.
Good evening, everyone. Has any of you seen me before, or if this is your first time, raise your hand. Did you get it? It's 100% participation. I can't tell you, I'm from a small town, I should say a retread, from a small town in southwestern Pennsylvania. I now live in Northern California, about an hour north of San Francisco, so you can pray for me. I'm saturated by what is no doubt the highest concentration of alternate lifestyles in the area I live. That doesn't mean anything, by the way. It just means that's what's so. It means that everybody has to deal with a lot of different things. We all have to face a lot of conflicts and confrontations in our lives. We have a lot of things that we do the day in, day out as we live our lives. Today, I have a distinct privilege of just being completely consumed with a fundamental truth, and it's going to cause me to do a couple quick things. So I want to make you a promise. I want to hit 3 things before we're finished tonight. Number 1, I want to hit 3 keywords. I want you to think about these as we work through them, because when I talk about them, you're going to go, aha, I know what he's talking about. Number 1, a cause worth perfecting. Okay, try to remember that phrase, a cause worth perfecting. Number 2, it's fixable. Okay, it's fixable. And number 3 is, I had to kind of alter this one because it wasn't really what I wanted to do, but I knew we were getting long on time and I wanted to compress it down. But an ideal, a common ideal. That's the word, the phrase. 2 words, common ideal. Quick business, the books are over in the back. The Imperfect Messenger Foundation is an entity I started as part of some other projects that I do with some analytical work. Can you all hear me okay? It's coming in and out. Okay. Thank you very much. But it developed for a couple of reasons. I was, 2008, November 2008, I was on a flight back from San Antonio, Texas, working in a real estate transaction that I was involved in. And I got a phone call from a gentleman who I'd worked with years before as part of the liquidation of a bunch of S&Ls. Many of you may remember the RTC days. Well, I liquidated 87 banks on behalf of the federal government. I've been there, I've done that. And I got asked to appear at a luncheon that was going to be attended by a bunch of federals, people from the federal government, does an analyst luncheon for the Federal Reserve Bank. And so, as that as a backdrop, let me explain something to you about why I think it's important that you pay attention to what's going on in the world around you. Why I think it's important that the gentleman that you see sitting here, Tim Aalders, becomes a component of your life. Okay? And I'll tell you why. One of the things that's amazing about our country is you have to remember we're a very, very young country, 225, 230 years old. We have not perfected the ideals of self-governance. We have not even perfected what many people think of as capitalism. What you think of as capitalism is a concept created by Karl Marx, who stole a phrase from a Russian poet who referred to people who use capital as capitalists. Capitalism is what becomes a free market economics once the federal government is done messing with it. Okay? Now, that doesn't really mean anything. Again, it means nothing. If you don't understand it in the context of why it is the world is the way it is, and why it is you're here tonight wondering what it is somebody's going to do about it to fix it. Right? It's about how it happens. And my advice to you is to remember something. Though the founding fathers were of distinctly different origins, and each of them, to a man, had distinctly different ideals, do you know what they managed to do? They did the most important thing we all can do. They managed to converge, get ready, upon a common ideal. You think of it as the Declaration of Independence. We see it in the physical realm of a document called the U.S. Constitution. We have not perfected the ideals of the Constitution. We have not perfected the ambition that lied back of the whole reason why the British were kicked out of this continent in the first place. Because why? Let me tell you another reason why. You are, as I stand here and I spend my time in front of large audiences and groups of people just like this, and I am delighted. I am delighted to be here. I am delighted because you know why? Because tonight when you go home, one thing I say tonight, you're going to take with you. You're going to take a piece of Curtis Greco with you. And you know what that means to me? I got to make it count. I got to make it mean lasting. I have to make it mean something that makes it seem as though your reason for being here was worth every penny, every moment. You are the physical expression of God Himself. Somewhere in the domain of God's infinite wisdom, He decided He was going to take the images in His mind that He saw for the potential of the universe, and He planted it in His mind. And He said, a part of this requires a physical instrument by which my idea is perfected. He needed a tool. And so He created you. He is the image maker. And He created the idea of mankind to do one thing and one thing only. And that is to inspire and create. To take the ideas that God Himself imagines and inspires every one of you with. God communicates with His children in three ways: instinct, inspiration, and imagination. And so what does He mean by this? What does this mean to you? What does it have to do with Tim? What does it have to do with the gentleman who spoke before me? What it means to each and every one of us is that we are individually an instrument of a divine intention, the purpose of which is known only to you as individuals. But it is to do one thing, and that is to perfect the cause to which you are called. One of the most beautiful things of standing at the Capitol Hill or in any one of the monuments in Washington, D.C., or standing at the Jefferson Memorial, which is one of my favorite memorials, is to stand there and think about what it meant to these people. I have a cousin of mine that has a helicopter, and he lives in Gettysburg, and he flew me over the Gettysburg battlefields. And I walked those battlefields. And I tell you, that's one of the most haunting experiences of my life. So my gift to you tonight is to remind you that you are part of a cause worth perfecting. What is that cause worth perfecting? The idea that lies back of and is espoused in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their creators with certain inalienable rights. Among these are what? Somebody please tell me. Well, pursuit of property, there's a good historian over there somewhere, but Thomas Jefferson did modify it for various reasons to pursuit of happiness. And the reason why most people don't know he changed it is the point I want to get to next. The concept of pursuit of happiness is not the pursuit of ignoble impulse. It is not the use of government to express the bias of a minority and impose that will upon the majority. You are all consenting governed. You are all the consenting governed. No, the concept what was I thinking? Pursuit of happiness. Thank you. I had a great pause. Comes from a Greek philosopher, Epicurus. Epicurus was somewhat of what we would think of today as an agnostic. But the point that Epicurus perfected was the idea of what was a cause that relevant to these principles of the ideal of happiness. And it's real simply this. He spoke of it from the terms of in that which in the course of you pursuing and expressing your life and liberty, you raise the standard, you raise the seas that we sail our ships of life on. You evoke in what you do a world that is refining principle that enlivens and enriches the people around you. You in fact become, from what you do, the very life force that feeds other people. You enrich the world around you, and in the process of doing that, you become happy. So let me conclude with this. Number one, you are part of a cause worth perfecting. Number two, it is and you are a part of a common ideal. And number three, and finally, it is fixable. Everything that's in Washington that is destroyed and been affected by the malfeasance of Congress and the lack of leadership is a fundamental truth, and I'll compress it in these ways. To remember, number one, we are a nation of freedom-loving people inspired with an ideal that is a lifeblood around the world that draws people to look at this country as something magnificent and wonderful. You are a light unto the world, but we must also remember that freedom is a very interesting vehicle, and it's one thing to remember that you must never surrender the ideals of freedom and sacrifice in the process your liberty. Because I have a phrase, and it goes like this: man must be free for independence, to be at liberty, to be expressed. Repeat it if you can. Man must be free and at liberty. I fouled up my own statement, didn't I? I did. It goes. Let me rephrase it. It usually goes something like that, but it goes better like this. Man must be free for independence, to be at liberty, to be expressed. Okay, man must be free for independence, to be at liberty, to be expressed. And I'll leave you with this final closing thought. Everything that comes to the surface of this planet that is an expression of God's divine inspiration expressed through you comes because you are at liberty to do it. Never forget that. So why Tim Aalders? Why Tim? Why today? Why now? Why is he important? And it's my final thought. Last one. It's a phrase. I love this phrase. Each one reach two. Each one reach two. Tim Aalders is not a perfect man, but the phrase of the imperfect messenger is very simply this: if the message be true, it remains so, despite the imperfections of the messenger. And that's why Tim Aalders is extraordinary, because Tim is not perfect, but he doesn't profess to be. But he has a perfect message. And that is, man must be free for independence, to be at liberty, to be expressed. I know him. He stands for it. Go out from this place and go forward, and each one of you reach two. And instruct them to each of them reach two. And you will transform magically, dynamically, the outcome of the November elections. Because across this country, 433 congressional seats are up for grabs, 33 Senate seats up for grabs. You will do more to transform this country for the better by revitalizing the Congress than what anything a president can or can't do. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here with you. Bless your hearts.